What's up, gamers? It's your boy, JKon. With C9 announcing the departures of MCE, Leaf, Cupert, Rooney, and Zelsis pretty much cleaning house from last year, with only Zeppa and Jake remaining on the roster, I thought it'd be cool to look back at this Chaos9 core and see how we ended up here as C9 transitions yet again to another phase. Let's get into it. Looking back at the original Cloud9 roster that was built around 10s, the only member who is still competing today is Mitch, who is currently on Oxygen Esports. Relics took a break from competition but is now looking to compete again. Shinobi has gone on to coach multiple Game Changers teams since his stint with Cloud9, and Vice kinda disappeared after his time in-game leading NYFU. Heading into 2021 is where we see C9 transition from 10s' team to Leaf's, as the latter was brought into the roster. Leaf was the first member of the ex-Chaos crew that was signed to Cloud9 Valorant. Who is Chaos, you might ask? Well, Chaos was a rising NA CSGO roster that was led by MCE. They consisted of Vanity, Zeppa, Jonji, Leaf, and Mark E. The latter came in to replace Steel, who was their IGL for almost a year before he switched to Valorant. Chaos wasn't the best team in North America, but they were starting to make waves in the scene, and I was a fan of theirs because who doesn't love an underdog story? Unfortunately, when COVID hit and CS went to their online phase, pretty much all of North American Counter-Strike died, especially Tier 2. So many players transitioned to Valorant as the opportunity as a North American player was extremely limited, as all the best teams were playing in Europe. This was the case for Leaf, Vanity, and Steel, as they all transitioned to Valorant, signing to Cloud9 version 1 and 100 Thieves respectively. Going back to Cloud9's Valorant roster, two very important pieces were signed after Leaf, which were Zeta and Autumn. I think Zeta at the time was one of the best info initiator players playing in Korea, and adding a new coach just helped this team grow. They also added Poise, who played Jet for the team, and as more players were added and dropped throughout the year, he played kind of a six-man role to help him develop before he eventually joined Cloud9 Academy at the end of the year. During the end of 2020 into 2021, Cloud9 CSGO division went off with their infamous tweet from the new general manager Henry G on building a Colossus, as they signed international talent of Alex, Mezzi, Voxic, and S-Attack. They rounded out the roster with North American native Floppy, but this roster saw immediate issues and changes. Kassad left the head coach position, and Voxic was dropped after 4 months into his 3-year contract, with Zeppa from Chaos signing his own 3-year contract to take his place. 2 months after the signing of Zeppa, the organization killed the Colossus and transfer listed the entire roster. This is when we had Floppy and Zeppa transition over to Cloud9's Valorant squad and reunite Leaf with his Chaos buddy. One of the things that I had to give praise for was this Cloud9 iteration's goal of being transparent with their contract decisions. They were one of the first organizations in esports that were open about their transfer fees, contract length, and deal value for their player acquisitions, which were very rarely made public in the first place. They got clowned on a lot because of this, especially as the project fell apart and most of these players were let go for free, costing Cloud9 a ton of money. But I still think it was a nice thing to see, especially as it's commonplace in regular sports like the NBA. We finally get back to Cloud9's Valorant roster as another member of the Chaos crew joins. Vanity, coming off of an international appearance at Masters Reykjavik with version 1, joins his previous teammates and created the Chaos9 core that we saw together up until the beginning of 2023. With their new roster solidified as Floppy returned to CSGO, C9 went on a tear through the NSG Summer Championship and qualified for NA's LCQ. They were able to make a lower bracket run after falling to Rise Gaming and got revenge on Team Vietnam in the Grand Finals 3-0, giving them a berth at Champions 2021. They were placed in Group D and lost their opening matchup to Fnatic 1-2, but once again were able to make a lower bracket run, defeating Full Sense and Vision Strikers to escape groups. They were matched up against Liquid in the quarterfinals and unfortunately fell 0-2, ending their year. Overall, this was a pretty good end result after transitioning from the 10s age to the Chaos 9 age throughout the year, as this roster showed a lot of potential. Moving into 2022, C9 breezed through the Knights Valor Rampage tournament, only dropping one map to NRG in the grand finals. They continued this momentum into the start of NA Challengers, winning each of their matchups leading into the playoffs. They unfortunately came in 3rd place, losing out to the 2 North American representatives who went to Masters Reykjavik that year, Optic Gaming and The Guard. The second season of Challengers began with C9 2-0ing Evil Geniuses, but this would be the end of the roster as we knew it, as Zeta and Autumn left to join T1, whose year was already over at this point as they did not qualify to Challengers. Curry joined in Zeta's place, and this new roster struggled immensely, only taking a series win against Sentinels, who had Raucus and Kenpeki playing on the roster. They were unable to qualify for playoffs, and we would see this roster compete in third-party events until LCQ arrived. They were unable to repeat the feat from last year as they placed top 4 in LCQ, falling to both grand finalists in 100 Thieves and the Guard. Their year was now over and this roster was once again looking at a rebuild for 2023. Cloud9, funnily enough, wasn't an organization that was originally accepted into Riot's partnered franchise league. G2 was the original frontrunner, but there at the time, CEO Carlos Ocelot Rodriguez Santiago said some very questionable things, and he didn't just double down on them. He tripled down on them, thus getting him kicked from his CEO position and G2 losing their partnership slot. Let me know down below in the comments if you want me to make a video on G2 as an organization and their time in Valorant. Cloud9 were selected as the replacement and went to work looking to put together the NA Super Team. James IRL, Mitch, and Curry were all dropped from the roster and were replaced by MCE, Ye, and Zelsis, with Cooper joining as their 6th man. This was the final piece of Chaos9 as their original coach has now joined them. There was so much hype for this team coming into the new year as C9 won the bidding war for the best player of 2022 and surrounded him with a core that saw previous success. This roster debuted at Red Bull Homeground, and despite losing their opening matchup to Focus in their group stage, they were able to make it to playoffs and eventually grand finals, where they went out 0-3 against the new look 100 Thieves. They didn't look too bad at the event, with Leaf and Zeppa frying, but they definitely still needed more time to gel together. The next time we saw this roster together, and unfortunately the last time we would see this vibe, was at Lock-In, where they were able to 2-0 Paper Rex in their opening matchup but fell to DRX 1-2. They looked quite dominant in their matchup against Paper Rex, with Leaf and Zeppa putting up enormous numbers, but when they ran into DRX they seemed to crumble. They took Pearl extremely convincingly with a 13-3 win, but once they moved to Haven, they got punched in the mouth and looked like they were rattled for the rest of the series because they only took 9 rounds in the last 2 maps. Stax was waving goodbye to them as he seemed to know that that was the end of this roster. The team definitely looked tilted and they were not performing well, and there was an immediate reaction to how Ye was acting compared to his teammates. And those Reddit armchair analysts were correct, as less than a month from their international exit, Cloud9 announced the release of Ye and Vanity, thus ending the Super Team project and the first member of Chaos9 to leave the roster. Last to join, first to leave, and possibly returning. We've now entered into the 2023 regular season, where we saw MCE cook with his 2 rookie pickups in place of their veterans. Cloud9 were able to surprise everyone in the regular season, going 8-1, only losing to Loud early in the season. Rooney looked pretty solid and his Sheriff was deadly as ever, but the real standout performance was definitely Jake, as he came into his own throughout the season and was one of the best controller players in the region by the time playoffs arrived. Leaf was looking like one of the best players in the region all year and was putting up numbers of 1.15 rating, 240 ACS, 147 ADR, and 74% cast. He placed top 3 along with Aspas and Les, who of course had monster seasons of their own. They got blown out in their opening playoff matchup against Evil Geniuses, only claiming 7 rounds across 2 maps, but no one was really stopping that team as the momentum of making it to playoffs was building for them. Cloud9 were able to beat Leviathan 2-1 pretty handedly, but fell to NRG in the lower bracket, although playing them extremely closely. They once again missed out on an international event, placing 4th and waiting for LCQ. In LCQ, they were able to stuff the new look Sentinel's momentum, but would find themselves in back-to-back losses to Latin American teams as Crew sent them to the lower bracket and Leviathan ended their year. They were able to take maps off of both of these teams, but for the most part they were handedly outplayed and yet again missed out on an international tournament. And that leads us to where we are today, with pretty much the entire roster gutted as just Jake and Zeppa remain. Chaos9 is no more, and the news that surprised me the most out of all of their roster moves was the release of MCE. The rumors were that Cloud9 were looking to go budget for their roster, and their initial moves of dropping Vanity and Ye in the year hinted at this. I definitely think that if you were to have a roster of nobodies or young talent that need development, MCE is a great coach for that because he has proved it before. Although he did say that if you become known as the man who makes magic out of nothing, you will consistently be given nothing, and he does not want to be in that position. I can totally see him not wanting to lead another young group, but MCE not being in the scene is just weird to me. Hopefully he can sign to a good organization and continue his magic. I've been following a lot of these players that made up Cloud9's roster for a really long time, and I was definitely a fan of their Chaos9 core, but as they seem to be going their separate ways, it's just sad to see, which made me inspired to tell their story. I hope to see all of these players continue to compete, but it's understandable the way the market is shifting that not everyone will be accepting of that. Cloud9 as an organization have definitely had a history of making drastic roster changes, and their time in Valorant has been no different. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what the new era of Cloud9 will be. And that's the video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about Cloud9 and their time in Valorant so far. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. If you like this video, consider checking out this video right here where I talk about Monyet joining Paper Rex in place of Jing and why I'm super excited for that roster. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay hydrated. Peace.